So welcome everybody to this instalment of the Spinal Research Institute in Conversation series. My name is Slaven and I'm the chair of the Spinal Research Institute. So I'm joined by a remarkable man who has and continues to have a positive impact on so many lives, and that's the Institute's co-founder and executive director, Associate Professor Doug Brown. Now, before we start, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. So Doug has had an exceptional career as a global leader in his field and a physician of over 30 years in the management of spinal cord injury. So Doug is passionate about improving the treatment and care of people with spinal cord injury, and he has had national and international positions within organisations. He's the former director of the Victorian Spinal Cord Service, a past president of the International Spinal Cord Society, and he's recognised internationally for his contributions to the field. A little bit more, Doug, and I don't want to embarrass you, but you've also contributed significantly in advances of the management of spinal cord injury through a wide range of research projects in things like the development of prevention of osteoporosis and muscle wasting, bladder and bowel management, and sleep disorder breathing, all issues associated with spinal cord injury. So for some viewers, you may have worked alongside Doug in a medical care or research setting, or perhaps Doug was your doctor who managed the treatment of your spinal cord injury, or a family member who spoke with Doug. Doug and I worked together at the Austin Spinal Cord Injury Unit as well, so we have a past history, and I am absolutely delighted to be interviewing Associate Professor Doug Brown. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Fee.
It's a big, long introduction, Doug.
Yes, I've got to live up to something, don't I now?
Absolutely. So maybe we could start with why you started in the field of spinal cord injuries, Doug.
Well, it's life is full of these little serendipitous moments and opportunities, and I became a resident intern at the Austin Hospital, which is where the Victorian Spinal Cord Service is. So it was the only traumatic spinal cord service in the whole of the state of Victoria, and also provided care for people coming from Tasmania and southern New South Wales. So it's the biggest in the country. It happened to be at the Austin. That's where I was working. And so in my second year, I did a rotation through the spinal cord service, and I hadn't really, had much to do with it before, because it's not a big topic in the medical curriculum. The basics, but really have no experience. And that 3 months was very enjoyable, actually. Met some great people. And the people with spinal cord injury and their family were amazing, really, because it's a pretty devastating thing to happen. But there are devastating things in all of medicine. So I guess it's the real problem, real issue, the real value, I suppose, was that one had a longer term relationship with them. They didn't just come and go. You met them when they had the injury, and you met them during the acute phase and then in the rehab and followed them up. So it was a long-term relationship, which was very rewarding, because you get to know people and they're not just passing medical issues, as it were. They're real people with real problems in their family and a context. And it's really enjoyable, because you meet some amazing people and you work with some amazing stuff. So I really enjoyed that 3-month term. And then I went on, and there was no opportunities really to go into that field, because it's very small. As I said, one in the state, a director and deputy director, and they were young, and there's no reason to move. And I went into physician training, and then did quite a lot of work in the renal field and a lot of research there. And then I was looking for getting out of research, because it's, you've got to keep getting a new grant, and a new grant to have a salary next year. And I needed some more sort of security financially for my family, and also something you could really, focus on, a more permanent position. And just at that time, the director at that time, young man in his 50s, David Burke, who you might well have heard of, decided to go and accept a TAC offer to set up a head injury unit at Bethesda. So suddenly the position was available, and that was really quite unexpected and exciting. So I applied and got the job as director of the spinal injuries unit at the Austin Hospital, which is now called the Victorian Spinal Cord Service. And I knew I would enjoy the long-term relationship, because it's like people with chronic renal failure. It goes on. So my experience and enjoyment always is in working with people and families in the long term. It's not always easy for us or for them, but the relationships are very important, and they're mostly extremely rewarding. People are amazingly resilient. They're resourceful. They're just, you learn so much, and every person is so different. So every time, even though you might be able to characterize an injury in medical terms, the people you can never characterize in anything but themselves. So that's how I really got into it. And it was once you're there, you don't want to move, and so I can understand why no one else moved. And the staff, the nurses and physios and OTs, the senior staff stayed for a long time and provided dedicated care, loved what they were doing. And of course, if you love what you're doing, you do better, I think, than something as just a job. And so people did overtime without pay and did extra things for patients and that. So it's a great field because you meet great people. Not that you wish anyone have a spinal cord injury, but you don't cause the injury, but you can offer some support to get through this time and get on with your life. And then, of course, you can't do much to make them live after they've left hospital, but you've given them a basis to work on. And hopefully a future that they can see is positive. And mostly that works out. People are amazing, really. But that's how it really came about. Wonderful experience for me. And so, I lasted the 31 years before I retired. And, I'd say it was probably, I couldn't have done better in any other field of medicine, I would say, in terms of what you can achieve and how you can help people and how they can support you and teach you and the relationships. It's wonderful.
Fantastic. I'm not sure that retirement has slowed you down, but that's fantastic anyway. So, look, there's been so many highlights and milestones throughout your career. What do you think one or two of your highlighted moments would be, if you wouldn't mind sharing those with us?
Right. Well, there are lots, and they're in different ways highlights. Some of them were about introducing services that improve the quality of rehab and the lives of people with spinal cord injury. So one thing I did was just after I became director was we started the psychological service. So psychiatrists and psychologists working with social workers to handle the psychological rehabilitation of spinal cord injury, because it isn't just physical, it affects your whole life and how you think about it and your family, and you could be depressed or give up or whatever. So it's very important to help people reconstruct a positive attitude building on their strengths, and that's where you need extra support, not physical but psychological. So I think that was pretty important. We were probably the first in the world, and we wrote all the initial papers about it and how to do it. And I think that probably was very important. Other things in the service line, I think probably one of the things started very early also was the tendon transfer program. And for quadriplegic patients who may only have shoulder movement or elbow flexion, to be able to give them some wrist movement and grips by transferring the tendons of the muscles they have control over, which are surplus, if you like, to requirements. You might weaken them a bit, but they're still functional in their old position, but in the new position, they provide new functions to make people more independent and sometimes totally independent, not dependent upon carers at all, able to dictate the time they get up and dress and shower because they can do it. And so I think that was also a highlight in the service delivery. We did other things too about sexuality and having children for the men, because they're usually infertile after a complete spinal cord injury. So there were a lot of issues like that we I think made a significant contribution to. And I guess the other kind of highlight was internationally, after the earthquake in Armenia in 1988, the Red Cross sent a team there, because although the Soviet Union was a world superpower, it had a medical system that would be equated to any underdeveloped and third world country at the time. And they certainly had no spinal cord service anywhere in the whole of the Soviet Union. And so the Red Cross set up one in Armenia, the capital of Yerevan, the capital of Armenia. And the David Burke, for his past experience, was the first person to head the team for 6 weeks. And then I went for 3 months and others followed. And that was really very interesting, because one, setting up a spinal cord service in that situation was challenging in its own way, certainly with a team of people, not all of whom had spinal cord background. So that was also challenging. But, great people as well. You met both Armenians and, the international people from all over the world who came as physios and OTs and nurses. And and then you're dealing with a kind of civil service, a bureaucracy at the hospital and in the country that was really a little different to what we were used to. So that was, but, you feel, I learned a lot about Armenia and history and all that, and met a lot of great people. And I think that unit still goes on. It's not supported by the Red Cross anymore, but at least it set a precedent in the Soviet Union, which has such a poor health service so it was an interesting highlight too, I suppose, in a different way. Becoming president of the International Spinal Cord Society was amazing, and opportunity to do some things, to really help bring the world of spinal cord injuries together in a professional sense and to develop it. And it goes on. I've stood on the shoulders of giants, and giants have stood on my shoulders, so I feel crushed. But, that's been really good to be part of that. And, so there are lots of other highlights. It's really hard to say the highlight or, even just meeting with patients, and certain people are special in a way in that you relate to them or the way they handle things. And that's always a highlight too. I don't know how you can describe those really, but it's a great. I've had great opportunities and had great experiences and lots of highlights and good moments.
Well, it's only a short video, Doug, so we had to limit you to a couple, but otherwise, it would be a series and we'd have to put you on Netflix because there's just so many things you've done. So, which is great.
Netflix, no. All right.
So you actually was a really good segue because, collaboration is such an important part of working together, and the global research collaboration is something that's fundamentally a part of the mission of the Spinal Research Institute. So how impactful do you think that collaboration can be from our perspective?
Well, from the point of view of people with spinal cord injury, the research that's done in their local unit is only in the sense of pilot studies. There are never enough patients because the incidence of spinal cord injury is so low compared with other major diseases like heart disease and stroke and diabetes, and that there are thousands of people. But in Australia, there's only one, which is already too many, of course, one new spinal cord case, less than that a day, less than 300 in 365 days. But there's a stroke every 9 minutes around Australia. So every 9 minutes, someone has a stroke. So everyone's met people who've had stroke, but not everyone has met people with a spinal cord injury. So the number of patients that could participate in a trial as trial subjects is small. And therefore, local studies are small, and therefore they're never definitive. They never come up with definitive answers, and always end up with looks promising, more research needed. But then more research doesn't happen because you can't go to a bigger study because you don't have any more people to enter into it. So collaborations is vital in this area. So you need people around the world bringing their small groups together and collaborating to have a multi-center study, a bigger study with enough people that when the outcome is analyzed statistically, you can say this works or this doesn't work. And if it works and you've got the evidence, then you can go to health departments and compensation bodies and aim to change health policy and health practice. You can go to doctors and medical institutions and physiotherapy associations say this is now standard of care. This is proved to make things better for people with spinal cord injury. And if it's proved and it's better, it's pretty hard to say we don't want them to have a better life. So you can really influence people. If you have a definitive study, but it has to be definitive and no question. And you can't do that with a little pilot study. So you need the collaborative big study. And that's what the Spinal Research Institute is founded to do, to build the capacity of researchers in the field working together to come up with multi-center studies that will define the future of people with spinal cord injuries by giving them better quality of services, better quality of care, prevention of complications, and hopefully get them back into the community in a more active way. You know, it's a real issue, I think, for our society and every society. In our society, about 30% of people with spinal cord injuries work. But for the non-spinal cord injured, even with the pandemic, it's over 90%. So a lot of people who could be contributing, could be having a fuller life, meeting people, being out, doing things, accomplishing things at work, are not doing it. So we, I think we need to work really hard to find out why the people who work are able to work despite all these physical issues of pressure sores and urinary infections and so on, and also what we can do to help those who are not working deal with the issues that prevent them. And so research is, I think, fundamental to changing the lives of people with spinal cord injury by changing health policy, medical practice, and that's what the Spinal Research Institute is about, is to really fill that gap. There's no international body that is about collaborative research. International body about professionals sharing ideas, but not about working together on a research project. So that's how the Spinal Research Institute got set up, and that was the fundamental underpinning philosophy and drive and ultimate goal.
And we're celebrating 10 years at the Spinal Research Institute in 2021, which is exciting. Something to look forward to after 2020.
Yes. But even in 2020, we have been moving forward in the field. So I think that it's like a lot of things. We've had to adapt, obviously, because of the things you can't do. You can't have meetings and that. The International Spinal Cord Society meeting was a virtual meeting for the first time. But we have moved forward. And so we have developed an online platform a few years ago. It was launched 3 years ago for researchers to work collaboratively online and get to know each other and start to formulate ideas. And we've now got some funding to actually establish a network of consumers, people with spinal cord injury, who are living the life of the spinal cord injured, so they can start to work and become collaborators with the researchers, because they obviously know what would affect them, how the research process could be most easily done with people who have difficulties getting to hospitals to have tests at 8 o'clock in the morning because they don't have the carers come and things. So it's very important. And they also know what the priorities are in this area of clinical research in spinal cord injuries. So we have someone now working to develop that second stakeholder group, researchers and people with spinal cord injuries. Both of them are essential to have a research project work. And so that I hope will be really quite a powerful new advance in our beginning of our 11th year as we celebrate 10 years and we move forward, because we're not sitting on the past, we're moving into the future. And so, yeah, it's a very important to just see where we've come and where we're going, and for celebration, as you say. Yeah.
Definitely. So, Doug, if you could go back in time, back to the future, what would your words of wisdom be to that young Fee and Doug when we both worked in the spinal unit?
I don't think wisdom is I'm very good at. I think the practical thing is that if you enjoy it, just do it and keep at it, and life will then become full. If you're pursuing other things like money or career path, going up the ladder or something, they're not goals that ultimately are really satisfying. The real satisfaction is working with people whom you enjoy working with, and trying to make a difference in the world, so that you leave a planet better than you found it in that area. I think that's how I would look at it. And I think therefore you need to have quite a wide view of life and not be focused on one small thing, as sometimes people are, on making money or getting up the career ladder. You need to have, they're part of life, but they're not the whole of it. And so I think keeping your broad interest in people locally and around the world, know what's going on. And the world's exciting and changing, and you don't get left behind if you know what's going on. You can be up there with it, and you can enjoy the changes and the challenges that come, and accomplish something, and have good relationships. So I would say, take the opportunity, what you're doing, make the most of it. And if you're not happy, then don't just keep going, move to something where you're going to be happy. Because, it's a long life. If you come in as a young person and you've got 30 or 40 years in your career, well, you want to enjoy that, don't you? It's not just that you want to come after 10 or 15 years, say, oh, there's no challenge here, I'm bored, what am I going to do? You have to get really into it at the beginning and be adaptable, take advantage of opportunities, there's no wisdom in that. I think it's a practical way of living your life. So it's a sort of the philosophy of life, that the way you approach it, really, I think.
Doug, thanks so much for your time today. You know, you're a very busy man, and it's really given our audience a bit of an insight into yourself, but also the Spinal Research Institute. And if people are interested, they can definitely go to the Spinal Research Institute website. So that's the sri.org. So please check us out. We're there. And Doug, I thank you so much for being virtually here and meeting with me today.
Oh, thank you, Fief, and not putting me through a grilling.
Next interview, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.